After leaving Atlanta, Rick and a group are stopped on the highway by a threat unlike anything they have seen before. While searching for someone who has gone missing, the group eventually discovers an isolated farm, where tensions arise among members of the main group, and the mysterious and ignorant inhabitants of the farm, whose secrets and motives are unclear. In the midst of events, Rick and the others try to restore order after a terrible discovery, as differences begin to openly erupt between Rick and Shane Walsh. The caravan of survivors finds the highway blocked by abandoned cars. Just then the radiator hose on Dale's RV bursts. The group decides to make a stop to get fuel and supplies from the scattered vehicles. After a tense scene, a large herd of walkers approaches. Dale is stuck atop his RV, Andrea is stuck inside the RV, while the others hide underneath the cars. A walker hears Sophia crying and begins chasing her. Terrified, Sophia makes a run for it, as two zombies chase her down a ditch and into the woods. Rick rushes after the walkers, reaches Sophia first, and asks her to stay hidden in a tiny hollow at the mouth of a stream. He leads the two walkers away to kill them. When Rick returns, he discovers Sophia is gone. The group organizes a search to find the girl before sundown. While marveling at a stag deer in the forest, Carl is critically wounded by a hunter's gunshot. Before the apocalypse, Lori waits for Carl as he gets out of school. She tells a friend that she had an argument with Rick the night before. Meanwhile, Shane arrives and tells her about Rick's injury. He prepares to take her to the hospital, where Rick is undergoing emergency surgery. As the flashback ends, Rick runs to seek help, carrying Carl in his arms. Shane follows them with Otis, the hunter who had accidentally shot Carl. They reach a farm, and Carl is attended to by an old man named Herschel. The bullet buried in Carl's chest has shattered into 6 fragments, and Herschel needs Rick's blood for a transfusion. Herschel withdraws 1 fragment, but concludes that he'll need surgical supplies to remove the other 5. Shane and Otis, looking for medical supplies, head to an abandoned FEMA evacuation center at a former high school. The location is now surrounded by walkers. Meanwhile, Rick asks that they send Maggie, Herschel's daughter, to the caravan. He wants her to bring Lori to the farm. Dale finds that T-Dog has an infection, non-walker in nature, in his arm, and will need to take antibiotics. They begin to search for meds, during which T-Dog stumbles upon a bloody baby seat. The group agrees to spend the night on the road waiting for Sophia, and then travel to Herschel's farm in the morning. When Lori finds out that Herschel is a veterinarian, she fears for the fate of Carl. Meanwhile, Shane and Otis get the necessary supplies, but are soon under siege by dozens of walkers at the high school. At the farm, Carl is near death and suffers from internal bleeding. He is surviving due to successive blood transfusions, but Rick, who is supplying the blood, is getting weaker and weaker. Back at the RV, which is still at the traffic snarl, Daryl Dixon cannot sleep during the night, since Carol can't stop crying. He decides to take a walk with Andrea to search for Sophia. Meanwhile, Shane and Otis, who are out collecting medical supplies, are short of ammunition and surrounded by a large number of walkers. They decide to split up and attempt to escape. Glenn and T-Dog arrive at the farm. T-Dog's wound is disinfected and treated. Herschel Green is ready to operate on Carl, and Shane, with the necessary medical supplies, arrives without Otis. Herschel asks everyone not to tell Patricia about Otis. After the surgery on Carl, Herschel informs Rick and Lori that the boy is stable. As Shane enters the house to take a shower, Maggie gives Shane some of Otis's clothes, so he'll have something to change into. As he prepares to take a shower, Shane notices a big piece of hair missing from his head. There is a flashback to when Shane and Otis were making their escape from the walkers at the high school. As both of them are running low on ammunition, Shane decides to wound Otis and sacrifice him to the walkers. Otis struggles with Shane. Although he is unable to save himself, he does rip a big chunk of hair from Shane's head, giving him a bald spot. The walkers circle around the wounded Otis and eat him alive. Shane, having found some clippers, shaves his entire head in order to hide the bald spot. The survivors arrive at Herschel's farm. Everyone participates in a small memorial ceremony for Otis. Herschel asks the survivors to hand over their weapons to prevent trouble. Maggie is in need of medical supplies and decides to head out to a pharmacy in the nearest town. She also decides that Glenn should tag along with her. Herschel tells Rick that as soon as Sophia is found and Carl is fully recovered, he wants Rick and the survivors to leave his farm. Laurie asks Glenn to pick up a special supply from the pharmacy. The group finds a walker trapped in a well, and they try to remove it without contaminating the water with its blood. They manage to get the walker out of the well, but the walker's torso is ripped in half, leaving its bottom half contaminating the water. After getting the medical supplies, Glenn and Maggie have sex. Meanwhile, a disturbed Shane prepares to train the survivors to defend themselves. Daryl seeks Sophia alone. He brings back a Cherokee rose to give hope to Carol. When Laurie gets her supply back from Glenn, she uses it and discovers that her worst fear has come true. Laurie is pregnant. Shortly after the outbreak, Shane, Laurie, and Carl are trapped in a traffic jam with Carol, Sophia, and Ed. Soon after, Shane and Laurie see Atlanta being bombed by the military. In the present, Daryl is on horseback, searching for Sophia. The horse gets spooked by a snake and knocks Daryl off. He falls down the cliff, having an arrow go through his backside and clean through the front. Daryl begins to hallucinate, arguing with visions of his brother Merle. He also attempts to climb back up the cliff so he can get back to the group. Andrea is acting as a spotter for the group, and when a bloody Daryl returns, she mistakes him for a walker and shoots him. Fortunately, her bullet only grazes the side of his face. He begins recuperating, with Carol's assistance. The two begin to form a bond. Glenn, having talked Maggie into a repeat of their earlier tryst, arranges a location without asking for her input. As he prepares to meet her in a nearby barn, Maggie rushes to try to stop him. It is too late, however, as Glenn looks in through an upper loft in the building and learns of the farm secret. Herschel is keeping a large group of walkers locked inside. The survivors are again prepping and searching for Sophia. Glenn is uneasy about the barn full of walkers. Maggie tells him to stop being so obvious about it. Daryl is still recovering from Andrea's friendly fire. She joins everyone, including some of Herschel's people, in learning how to properly shoot a weapon. Glenn shares the secret of the barn with Dale, who later confronts Herschel about the walkers. Dale warns him that they are dangerous, but Herschel insists that they are simply sick people, who may one day be cured. Andrea and Shane have a rough training session, since Shane keeps needling her. He then callously brings up her sister Amy. Shane apologizes and asks Andrea to join him in the search for Sophia at the nearby Wiltshire estates. Herschel still wants Rick and his group to leave the farm. Laurie tells Rick he needs to convince Herschel to let them stay. Laurie has also decided she doesn't want to keep her child, which she still hasn't told Rick about. She asks Glenn and Maggie to go back to the pharmacy to get abortion pills. During the supply run, Maggie is attacked and nearly bitten. Laurie takes the pills, but then decides she still wants her child. As she vomits up the medicine, Rick finds the pill package. Laurie admits her secret. Glenn finally tells everyone that there are walkers in the barn. The group discusses how they should proceed. Shane believes they should be killed, but Rick says they need to respect Herschel's wishes, since they are guests on his land. Rick then confronts Herschel, while trying to convince him to let the group stay. They are interrupted by Jimmy, who tells Herschel they captured more walkers. Shane goes after Dale, wanting the weapons to take care of the walkers in the barn. Dale, however, has snuck away from the RV, taking the weapons with him. Shane finds Dale and confronts him. Dale says he knows what kind of man Shane is and what he did to Otis. Shane threatens Dale, then takes the weapons back to the farm. Rick sees what Shane is planning and tries to stop him. It is too late, though, as Shane throws open the barn doors to release the walkers. Everyone shoots them, while Herschel and his family watch in horror. The last walker then emerges from the barn. It is Sophia. Everyone is stunned into silence by what Sophia has become. Carol watches in tears, as Rick steps up to her daughter and shoots her in the head. Emotions run high in the aftermath of the barn walker massacre. Maggie's younger sister Beth grows ill. She shows no sign of injury or fever, but appears to have fallen into a state of shock and depression. Rick and Glenn search for a missing Herschel. Relations between Shane and Dale worsen, and Dale reveals to Laurie that he believes Shane shot Otis and used him as a diversion to escape the FEMA shelter. The survivors bury Sophia, as well as Herschel's wife and stepson, as it was revealed that Herschel's late family members were also being kept in the barn as reanimated corpses. The group burns the rest of the barn walkers. Carol refuses to attend Sophia's funeral, which angers Daryl. Laurie decides to go after Rick when Beth's condition worsens, but ends up wrecking her car on the way to town. Rick, meanwhile, finds Herschel at the local bar and tells him about Beth. Herschel has been drinking and admits that in his youth his alcoholism made life difficult for his loved ones. Rick tells Herschel that he needs to pull himself together, as he still has a family that depends upon him. A couple of strangers enter the bar. They introduce themselves as Dave and Tony. What begins as a friendly encounter turns heated. The men are desperate and imply that they are willing to use force to attain what they want. However, they are no match for Rick's instincts and quick reflexes, and are killed when they finally make a move to attack. Laurie recovers from her accident. As she crawls out of the wreckage, she is attacked by walkers. Shane rescues her, then lies to her and says Rick that is returned to the farm. When she finds out about his deception, Shane explains that his first priority was keeping her safe. He also unintentionally reveals her pregnancy to the entire group. Later, Shane and Laurie talk about their previous relationship. Shane is convinced that Laurie still has feelings for him, and that he can protect both her and Carl better than Rick. In the town, Rick, Glenn and Herschel attempt to escape, but 3 other men, Nate, Sean and Randall, have arrived in search for Dave and Tony. When Rick confesses to killing the men, a shootout occurs. Walkers arrive in the town upon hearing the gunfire, and Herschel inadvertently causes Sean's death when he injures him, and leaves him helpless to escape from the walkers. Nate and Randall attempt to flee, but Randall impales his leg on a gate, causing Nate to abandon him. Rick, Glenn and Herschel rescue Randall, and the 4 safely return to the farm. Rick plans to send Randall away after his leg has healed. Shane disagrees, insisting that they should kill the man. Once they're alone, Laurie tells Rick that she thinks Shane is dangerous. 1 week has passed since Rick brought Randall back to the farm. Now that the man is sufficiently healed, Rick and Shane are transporting him to a faraway area. On the way, Rick confronts Shane about Otis's death. He also tells him he knows about his attraction to Laurie. Shane admits to it and apologizes. The men decide to drop Randall off in a town 18 miles from the farm, leaving him only with a knife. Randall begs the 2 to keep him, and unintentionally reveals that he went to school with Maggie. Rick and Shane deduce that it's possible that Randall knows the exact location of the farm, and could lead hostile outsiders back with him. Shane attempts to kill Randall, but Rick stops him. He believes they should discuss their options first. The disagreement escalates into a physical battle, during which Shane inadvertently releases a horde of walkers. Rick, Shane and Randall barely escape alive. Randall is gagged and bound. Rick tells Shane that he should obey his orders from now on. Back at the farm, Beth contemplates killing herself. Laurie and Andrea argue over whether they should keep her on suicide watch, or allow her to do what she chooses. Andrea talks to Beth, telling her that the pain will not subside, but can and should be coped with. She opens the bathroom door for Beth. Beth smashes the bathroom mirror and slits her wrist. Her suicide attempt is half-hearted, though, and Laurie and Maggie are able to easily bandage her injury. Maggie is furious with Andrea, realizing that she had allowed Beth to attempt suicide. She forbids Andrea to enter the house again. Andrea defends her actions, saying that Beth explored her choices. Her attempt convinced Beth that suicide is not an option. Daryl tortures Randall for information. Randall reveals that he comes from a large group. In the time he was with them, he saw some members rape 2 teenagers, although he did not participate. The group believes that Randall is dangerous, and decide that they should execute him. Dale begs the group to reconsider. He feels that if they kill Randall, they will sacrifice the morals that keep them human. Meanwhile, Carl has grown cold and bitter, disrespecting Carol and stealing a gun from Daryl. He attempts to execute a trapped walker, but instead inadvertently causes it to escape. Carl is forced to flee. At the farm there is a final vote on Randall's fate. Dale attempts one last time to convince the others not to execute the man. Dale's words make the others feel guilty, but only Andrea changes her vote. Dale storms out, lamenting that the group is broken. Herschel gives Glenn a pocket watch, a family heirloom that shows that he approves of Glenn's relationship with Maggie. Rick, Shane and Daryl take Randall to the barn to execute him. The process is temporarily postponed when Carl is revealed to be watching. Meanwhile, Dale explores the land and comes across a gutted cow. He is then attacked by a walker which rips open his abdomen. Daryl arrives and kills the walker, and when the group arrives, they realize they can't save Dale. Carl is shocked to see that the walker that gutted Dale is the same one he accidentally released. Rick attempts to put an end to Dale's misery, but is too distraught to do it. Daryl volunteers, takes the gun from Rick, and proceeds to shoot Dale. The group holds a funeral for Dale. Rick asks the group to stay united, lest they prove Dale's claims that they are broken to be true. Herschel becomes hospitable to the group, allowing all but Shane to move into the farmhouse. Carl confides in Shane about his guilt in the involvement with Dale's death. Shane convinces the boy to tell Rick. Rick comforts the boy, telling him that death has always been inevitable, even during normal times. Setting her concerns aside, Laurie approaches Shane. She tells Shane her true feelings, that at the time she did care for him, but now they should put that relationship behind them. She tries to convince Shane that he still belongs with the group. Rick decides to spare Randall's life once and for all, leaving him in a place far away from the barn. Shane takes Randall out a good distance, but then tricks the man and kills him, breaking his neck. He then injures himself to make it look like Randall escaped. Glenn, Daryl, and Rick join Shane in searching for the supposedly escaped Randall. Glenn and Daryl find Randall, who has become a walker, and put him down. They are perplexed by how he was reanimated without any walker bites or scratches. Rick meanwhile picks apart Shane's story. He confronts Shane, knowing that the man plans to murder him. The two argue on who would be a better father and husband. Rick insists that they lay their weapons down. Rick then quickly draws a knife and kills a distracted Shane. Rick grieves his friend's death, and curses him for forcing his hand. Carl unexpectedly appears, shocked over Shane's death. He appears to pull a gun on Rick. Rick calmly asks Carl to lower his gun, but it is revealed that the boy was aiming for an undead Shane. The dead man, like Randall, has reanimated without a bite or scratch. Carl kills the reanimated Shane, but a horde of walkers hear the gunshot and advances towards the location. Carl questions Rick about Shane's death. There is no time to discuss the matter, though, as the two are forced to flee to the barn as walkers close in. The two corral a number of walkers inside the barn, then burn the structure in an attempt to eliminate the creatures. Daryl and Glenn report Randall's death and reanimation to the group. The survivors then spot the horde. They devise a plan to let all the walkers away, but it fails. Beth's boyfriend Jimmy and Otis's wife Patricia are killed. The group has no choice but to leave the farm. Andrea is left behind, and attempts to fend off numerous walkers. She is saved when a hooded figure, wielding a katana and accompanied by two armless walker pets, intervenes. The survivors, with the exception of Andrea, reunite on the highway. They camp out for the night after they run low on gas. Rick admits to Laurie that he was forced to kill Shane in self-defense. Having softened her position on Shane, Laurie is stunned about this revelation. She withdraws from Rick. When Daryl confronts Rick about Randall's reanimation, Rick reveals what Dr. Edwin Jenner whispered in his ear. They are all infected. Anyone who dies from any cause, under any circumstance, will reanimate. This revelation upsets the group. When they question Rick's leadership, Rick snaps, telling them that he never asked for the leadership position, and he has done everything he can to keep the group safe. He shouts that he killed Shane for them. He tells them that anyone is welcome to leave, if they feel they can do better without him. When no one chooses to exit, he issues a final warning. If you're staying, this isn't a democracy anymore. He has established himself as the group's leader. As the camera pulls back, it is revealed the group is unknowingly camped near a fortified prison. The next part contains serious dramatic events, and there is a lot of horror. If you are interested in hearing the story of the film, please subscribe to the channel and follow the other episodes. Don't forget to like and share the video. We meet in the next part.